One of our herbal knowledge keepers, Judy, who lives in Nigeria, requested a video on Cascara Sagrada. So this is for you and everybody else that perked up when you mentioned that you use it in your skincare products for skin irritation. There was a lot of interest in that because in this country, when folks hear Cascara Sagrada, they think, oh, laxative. End of story. But there really is a lot more to this story, so let's dig into it. First of all, yes, it is used for skincare. It's used for sunscreen, and a tincture of it has been used on fingers to stop nail biting. It's been used for dandruff and care of the hair, for weight loss, for a lot of things besides laxative. But it has to be used carefully because it is very strong and has a purgative, laxative action when taken internally. So we're looking at the database, and what you see here in the middle, of course, is our topic. On the left here, we've got some of the constituents. These are the powerful anthraquinones that give it its laxative action and do a lot more. Let's just take a quick peek, for example, at this one, Emodin. It's a buckthorn, and all of the buckthorns seem to contain Emodin. And these up at the top are some of the actions of Emodin. So indirectly, if we know that it has Emodin, and so do these other plants have a large amount of it, we can assume that it may have some kind of effect on these conditions up here. We see that it's a phytochemical for osteoporosis. It helps with cadmium toxicity. In fact, there's a study that was done using some plants to remove cadmium from the soil. One of the plants was the Mediterranean bug. So we see that it helps different types of cancer and H. pylori, influenza A. Let's go back. Oh, and MRSA, yes. We're just going to scroll through the top here of some of the conditions that we are familiar with that it treats. It does help with appetite loss if it's taken in very small doses, kind of like an aperitif. If you were to have a tea and just take a wee bit of it before eating, it would help. And it's a cathartic. Now, it's called a laxative, but that is not technically correct because in herbal parlance, a laxative is something that moistens the stool to make it easier to eliminate, whereas a cathartic has a strong irritant action on the lining of the bowel that causes the bowel to kind of go crazy, and the peristaltic action all of a sudden comes to life and it forces evacuation. That can be quite painful, so any cathartic laxative needs to be accompanied by some type of carminative herb that reduces spasm. Dyspepsia, that's, just basic stomach upset, again in small doses. It can help with flatulence, but I think there are other herbs I would rather use for that. It's used for gallbladder and liver problems, again in small doses, and you don't take it for a long time. Maximum for taking Cascara Sagrada is 2 weeks. And after that, there can be some issues, but that we'll get into. These are Chinese syndromes, gallbladder and stomach chi stagnation. Things are just not moving along, and this can stimulate it. Now, those anthraquinones, it's interesting because they're inactive until they reach the bowel, where the bacteria act on them and change them into active substances called anthrones. And what those do is they actually are destructive of the cells lining the intestines. And you can get away with doing that for a little while. But if you keep taking it, and especially if you're taking it in large doses, there is a condition called, I'm pointing to it here, called melanosis coli, where there is kind of a permanent dark pigmentation in the colon. Now, it's thought that that's harmless, but there's some question about that, and I've seen some studies suggesting that if you continue to take these types of cathartic laxatives and continue to injure those cells, that it could be a cause of colon cancer. It can help with gallstones at the very early stage. So if you know that you've already got a problem with gallstones and you have them, you would avoid this because it's going to be forceful and that can cause some injury. But at an early stage, the small doses of Cascara Sagrada can be helpful to just make sure that doesn't develop. It helps hemorrhoids kind of indirectly because when you're constipated, you might be straining on the stool, and that can cause hemorrhoids or irritate them. So if you can eliminate the straining, that's just going to be a help for that issue. Now, let's scroll through a little bit here. Jaundice. This is due to its action on the liver. Liver cirrhosis, it can be helpful. It's not, the only thing I would use for that, definitely. And for liver congestion. So it's just kind of stimulate all of these parts of the body. And let's just, Chinese syndrome of liver fire. Here's the genus. I'm going to open up the info panel, which in this new version of the database is in the internal browser. We're going to just kind of tell the story a little bit. So originally this plant was discovered. It's one of the buckthorns that grows in the Pacific Northwest, and when explorers went up there, they found the tribes using it for its laxative properties. They called it sacred bark. The explorers did. That caught on, and now a lot of different buckthorns are lumped under that term, Cascara Sagrada, although technically it refers specifically to this species called Rhamnus persiana, which has been changed into a different genus. It seems that a lot of different species of buckthorn are used in the same way as a purgative laxative, and they are marketed as Cascara Sagrada. So when you're buying it, you might just look and see where it came from. Now here in the Ozarks, the one that we use is the Fragula caroliniana. And so as far as the qualities go, the herbal qualities and actions, it is bitter. That's why it can work for stopping nail biting. It's a bit astringent, and it's cold. That's an energetic quality, and that just means that as a cold herb, it's going to help with heat symptoms. It is moistening, it is stimulating, dissolving and sinking. Because it's sinking, that's any sinking herb like this, that's a caution for you pregnant ladies. Don't use it. Here are the main constituents, and I'm just going to skip down some. So here are the conditions that we know it for. Obviously, promoting bowel movement, clearing heat, resolving accumulation, and specifically for intestines dry heat. That's where there's a hard swollen abdomen and constipation. As far as the liver fire, if you know that's going on, it can be helpful. Now, we see that it is used for febrile and inflammatory digestive disorders. However, you're going to find in the caution that you might not want to use it. It can be a problem there. And any obstructive issue. Well, if you're really constipated, how do you know if there's an obstructive issue? But anyway, you have to be careful with this one. Very effective if used correctly. Now let's just skip down to preparations here. If you are making your own medicine from the bark of one of these buckthorns, you have to be sure to age it for at least a year, because otherwise it's way too strong and you're going to be in serious pain using it, and I don't think even a carminative would help. Now the doses are different doses for different purposes. So the small doses have the stimulating effect. If you want to increase appetite, go for the small dose. If you want to stimulate the liver and the gallbladder, small doses. The medium doses are going to give you a laxative effect. The larger doses are the ones that are cathartic and purgative and heat clearing, but you need to understand that in terms of energetic herbalism. So you can pause the video here if you like and just look at what these doses are. And the laxative action can usually be felt in 6 to 8 hours. It's a good idea to take it together with something like psyllium fiber and prune juice. Now I'm going to open this up all the way and just show you some of the contents in the database for Cascara Sagrada. This Wiki article covers the basics on the plant itself, preparation, precautions, FDA regulation, and all of that. The range and the habitat, there you see where it comes from, this area of the country. In 2002, the FDA said that Cascara over-the-counter laxatives weren't safe or effective. And studies on elderly population showed that the majority of people using laxative products long-term could discontinue their use if they added a fiber supplement. One of the issues here with the FDA is that a lot of people don't really know what they're doing. They're just buying something and taking it in a way that can cause damage. You can still get Cascara Antimicrobial actions. Okay. So the emodin is antimicrobial against H. pylori, E. coli, several strains of Staph aureus. Also against Candida. It does have anti-inflammatory actions. And Cascara Sagrada is being investigated for its potential application as a cancer treatment. It, through its emodin, can inhibit a lot of different types of cancer types in vitro. And so we see here experts have suggested that emodin may have a role to play as an adjunctive therapy to traditional cancer treatments. Still a lot of work has to be done there. It has an effect on the central nervous system, particularly on the brain's receptor signaling mechanism, and it might possess serotonin to protect against amnesia in induced animals. And then you'll find some more information about taking it and how to make the tea. I'm going to skip over to this article. And I suggest you take a look at this one because here this is getting into how it can be toxic to the liver. It generally considered safe and well tolerated, but it can create clinically apparent liver injury when used in high doses for longer than recommended. And that often is the case where there's an herb that treats an organ and at the same time can injure the same organ. So that's why we have to learn how to use these things. And there's a lot of information here about how it injures the liver, what the hepatotoxicity is all about. Short term, the way it's recommended, it's not a problem. And if there are any problems, they're mild and transient. We start digging into some of its uses. It's thought to have some anti-aging properties. A cold tea made from cascara extracts is used to treat patchy skin. Now we saw that it was moist in its qualities, and so it can help make the skin stay hydrated. It's used to prevent and treat hair and scalp problems internally. Now again, just keep in mind these would have to be low doses and don't use it that way. There are other things for the hair if you have liver problems. It can be used as a conditioner to make the hair soft, strong, and shiny. So there you're just going to decoct Cascara Sagrada and use it as a hair rinse and leave it in the hair. Now we're going to take a look at what James Duke offers us through the Duke database. And sadly, he has just recently passed away at age 88, a great ethnobotanist who taught us so much about plants. Here we see, in terms of his ethnobotanical studies, that it was used as an aperient, and that's to stimulate appetite. And this came from a reference in Japan that for bilious problems, that's the gallbladder, in Canada it was used. In the United States for cancer, of course, as a laxative in the United States, and purgative. Now, it is used as a emetic. If you take that fresher root and any of that, it can cause you to vomit, and that's, if you want to use an emetic, that's another thing you could do. And so let's just finish up over here. Here its different properties are sorted according to what is super effective, highly effective, and effective. Well, constipation definitely. But we see here it is considered highly effective for liver diseases, gallbladder, stomach problems, and it is effective for anal fissure, arthritis, and ascaris, that would be in types of worms. It combines well with fennel, licorice, red clover, and as far as risks, excess use may cause electrolyte imbalance, and if that's happening, you'll know it because you'll feel dizzy, have blurred vision, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, and that can cause some organ damage.